because the first sign of breast cancer.
Hey there! Welcome to Idle Exchange, the only program currently on television that is oriented towards a generation that is reputed to be too apathetic to be able to find it on their dial anyway. But that's all right, because we're going to help you with that. Today's topic, the topic of today's show is going to help solve some problems, I think, that members of the 20-something generation have. One of which is, you know, the situation. You graduated college, you're living in your parents' basement, don't know what to do with yourself, can't get a real job, and you're thinking, maybe I'll apply to graduate school. But all the graduate schools in the country deny your entry. So you're thinking, well, there's always prison, right? But no, see, prison is no good. It's the bureaucracy, and there's too much crowding. So you think, I know, I'll join that band of elitist, globe-trotting do-goodniks in the Peace Corps. Yeah, well, a lot of people actually do think about joining the Peace Corps, whether in their 20s or older, and for whatever reason never do, although they know it's a noble thing to do. But today we have two returning Peace Corps volunteers who have spent 2 years in Panama helping out and then did some traveling in South America edition. They're going to tell us a little bit about the experience. So first of all, I'd like to welcome my guests, Kirsten Evans and John, is it Whitney?
Withey.
Withey, John Withey. So first of all, thank you for coming on the show. And first, I guess I'll ask you, Kirsten, my first question is, you must know the popular conception of what the Peace Corps is about, and you must encounter people now that you're back, and even before you came back, who had some image of what the Peace Corps is all about. What generally do people think of when you mention that you were in the Peace Corps? What's their popular image?
Well, the number one question is, so did you eat bugs?
Did you eat bugs?
And the answer is no.
So that's the sum total of your 2 years of dedicating your life to the betterment of another society.
Well, that seems to be, you know, the current American culture. You know, if it's not something disgusting, it has to be violent. So that's what they look for.
And a lot of people will say, Peace Corps, you know, they still have that?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not knowing that it has been continuous since whenever John F. Kennedy started it.
1961.
I think Sergeant Shriver is going to come on as a walk-in later, and he'll give us the details.
I'm sure he will.
But there must be people who do know about the Peace Corps. I mean, I remember the ads for the Peace Corps at least, and what was that documentary they had featuring Tom Hanks about life in the Peace Corps?
Documentary.
Volunteers.
That's right. So do people have an image that they relate to you, and you're like, well, that's not really the case?
Yeah, I mean, most people actually do remember that there is a Peace Corps, and I think popularly it's probably building huts in Africa or something like that.
Or digging wells and things
digging
like that.
Latrines.
Digging latrines.
Well, I think to the point.
But that's the glamorous side. Really.
It's to the point that a lot of volunteers in our training group were surprised when they were placed in a community that had electricity.
Yeah.
Disappointed even maybe a little bit?
Yeah, actually.
Really?
You know, because everyone thinks you join Peace Corps to have this really roughing it, you know, on the edge of survival experience. And many of us were in places with, you know, paved roads, electricity, TV, you name it, telephone.
Satellite dishes.
Telephones
Absolutely.
not in the house, but
Although
telephones
some
in the
people,
community.
Yeah,
Well,
a few, but.
So the reality is it's not as rustic potentially. Some places I'm sure it still is that way, where Peace Corps volunteers go. But if they go to some place that is totally desolate and has no signs of development, then wondering where was the Peace Corps the past 30 years.
well, I think the African continent has a lot more of those sites, whereas the Inter-America region, as it's called, I think, Latin and South America, there's a little bit more infrastructure. Certainly in Panama there was.
So what kind of things if the Peace Corps is not so much about building latrines, that's not a noble cause.
Certainly.
What is it? Is it more about education, or what did you guys do, for example? I suppose, Kirsten, what did you do? What was your?
Okay. All volunteers have a primary project, and so we are known as environmental education volunteers because our primary project was working in the local schools, training teachers in environmental education techniques. But outside of that, you can have secondary projects, which can be with your community. They can be developing curriculum materials. You know,
is this up to you partially?
It's pretty much up to you.
Definitely.
You know, and it can be. You know, your community may say, "Hey, could you help us do this or that?" And you say, "Sure." You say, "Well, not really." you know.
Can you help us get guns?
Exactly. So I actually ended up, and sometimes those take up more of your time and energy than your primary project, and that's what happened with me. I spent most of my time working with my community, helping them form a cooperative.
Oh, okay. And how about now? You were on the East Coast, right? The east. You were on an island on the.
Well, actually, Panama. Let's get it.
Right,
We
right,
need
not
a
east,
visual,
right,
but
that's it.
Panama runs more east-west,
Right,
so it's
that's
got a
right,
north
sorry,
coast
the
and a
the
south.
Atlantic Ocean side.
No, I was on the Pacific.
You were on the Pacific. Okay, so you were on the. You were closer to the.
I was closer to the Pacific also.
Okay,
yeah.
okay, so I totally have no idea what you're talking about. Can we get the regular host in here? So what were you doing? But you were definitely an ocean.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
living on an
Right.
island, so.
But you were more inland.
Yeah, you could see the coast, but it wasn't real close. In Panama, in addition to the environmental education project or program, there's also agroforestry. And right now, starting a very small, maybe 2 volunteers this year, small business program with emphasis on ecotourism.
Oh, okay.
But that's just Panama. I mean, throughout the Central and South America, there's other programs, health and community development as a general program. But I was also an environmental education volunteer, and I worked more in the schools with teachers because I had good teachers. That is, they were motivated to learn the techniques and use activities in the classroom, which is the ultimate goal of this program. And I was working on more of the curriculum side, working on activity guides that the Ministry of Education in Panama is printing to distribute to their schools right now, primary schools.
So you're working with the government of the nation.
Well, the Peace Corps always comes to a country at the invitation of the government, and at least in Panama had an agreement specifically with a ministry, in our case Ministry of Education, that volunteers would work in schools with the teachers, and technically we're supposed to report to a official in the ministry of a region, although that really depends on what he or she is like.
Okay, so now you mentioned earlier, Kirsten, about that some of the volunteers got there and they were surprised there were electricity, and that begs the question of how well does the Peace Corps organization prepare you for what you're going to experience when you get there? I mean, I know they had intensive Spanish training, which you desperately needed because you didn't speak any Spanish. Now you already spoke some Spanish, from my understanding. But what else? When you got there, did you feel like you were adequately prepared?
Well, actually, we were trained in Costa Rica because the Panama program is really small and was restarted in 1991, I think, following the U.S. invasion.
So was that the main goal of the invasion? Was to get the Peace Corps back up
to
and running?
reestablish
Peace Corps back,
absolutely.
Interesting how military goals work so well with peacetime goals.
Yes, yeah. So the 3-month training, which is the norm for most Peace Corps programs, is 1/3 technical training, which is our program area education, environmental education, 1/3 language training, and then 1/3 cultural adjustment and adaptation skills. For us, it's very unfortunate that we were trained in Costa Rica because Costa Rican culture and Panamanian culture are different, and they also speak different. They speak Spanish differently, Panama being much faster and harder to understand for
Too bad it wasn't
most
the other way
other people.
around.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a shock getting to Panama finally. I think it would be difficult in that kind of training situation when you're in a training center. It really felt like being back in school and not college. You know, that you were there 8 to 4 going to classes with all the other trainees.
Rapping on the knuckles,
Yeah.
doing the
Yeah,
nuns.
it would be pretty difficult to be trained in that sort of a situation, to have that kind of training situation be directly applicable to the Peace Corps experience is pretty different.
It's a very structured environment. And
Yeah, very
you
different.
get to your site as an actual volunteer after the training, and it's a very unstructured environment. Meaning you get up, what am I going to do today? It's up to you and not
Nobody's there holding your hand.
But there's also no TV for you to be like, yeah, well, I missed the beginning of this Who's the Boss episode when it first aired, and so.
Now I can see it in Spanish.
So what are the things, the most difficult things that you encountered that you had to deal with yourself in terms of living situation or the people, ingratiating yourself with the locals? I mean, any tourist or traveler, world traveler will tell you, successful way to travel is to get in with the locals.
Yeah.
And how did you become one? I mean, that's a sort of difficult question. And they just like, who is this gringo?
Yeah, well,
Gringa, excuse me.
Gringa, yeah. You never really become one. I think after my first year, I felt like I made the transition from being a newcomer to, it not being such a big deal when I would visit someone. In Panama, and I think most of Latin America, in the countryside, visiting is very important. Just going to your neighbor's house and sitting down to chat about the weather for an hour, for example, or two.
Knocking back a little chicha fuerte.
Right. And so during that first year, it's sort of a big deal when the volunteer comes to visit, whereas during the second year, people are used to you. And I felt like I would always be, in most houses at least, sort of an honored guest. I'd never make the complete transition to being a local. In 2 years, you really can't. Even if you lived there all your life and got married, had kids, that you would still be the gringo of the community you lived with.
But at least you'd be distinct.
Yeah. But it's definitely, it's something you can do, and you just, you talk to people and make friendships just like anywhere else, really.
What about you, Kirsten? You have any anecdotes about difficult living situations or anything you might want to share just off the top of your head?
Just off the top of my head.
That we hadn't discussed before the show or anything like that? Is there a chicken story? Because our director has a great chicken story, and so I'm going to have to, his involves his mother getting drunk.
Pandering to his interest in chickens.
Well, I'm going to compare the chicken stories. His involves his mother getting drunk, which is, two real aces in his favor, but we'll hear you out. So
okay. Well, I think one of the hardest things for North Americans to adapt to in Latin America is the fact that you can't be direct. Panamanians especially are very indirect. It's not considered polite, and it's actually quite shocking to directly express discontent with something.
At least in the countryside.
In the countryside. I mean, the city, it might be different, but still, I think, they prefer that you do it very indirectly. And I find that difficult in English, let alone Spanish. So the infamous chicken story actually is a way of dealing with being indirect. I lived in the typical Peace Corps house. It was a bamboo hut with a palm thatch roof, and everybody in Panama, in the countryside, has chickens. They eat chickens. Right. They have chickens. Eggs, yeah. And the chickens are not usually in a coop. They're allowed to run free around the community, and everyone gets annoyed at their neighbors' chickens for eating their flowers, all this stuff.
But very ahead of the times with free-range chickens
Absolutely.
in Panama, long before it ever became popular here.
Absolutely. And so everyone, neighbors are always having these little spats over the chicken getting into their yard. And so I'd have chickens regularly running through my house. Well, one chicken, because they also don't clip their wings, so one
Beautiful
chicken,
to watch them soar.
Absolutely, yes, pictures of grace. This chicken started flying up to my roof, on top of my thatch roof, to look for bugs. And the problem was my roof was in an advanced state of decay.
As in things were sprouting out of
Things were growing in my roof. It was totally decomposed. And so when the chicken would start digging for the bugs, it would make holes in my roof. And it was the beginning of the rainy season, so I found this fairly upsetting. It was, of course, my neighbor's chicken, and I knew exactly what chicken it was, but I couldn't say to my neighbor, look, your chickens are bothering me, keep it off my roof, because that would set off a big, World War III, and I certainly didn't want to have that happen. And, you can also say to your other neighbor, hey, so-and-so's chickens are really a pain, aren't they? Because it'll get back.
Right.
But still, can still set off the war.
Direct. Okay.
Absolutely. So what I did is John was going to come visit me for a weekend, and I said, well, I told everyone, John's coming to visit, I want to make him this really nice meal. And I offered to buy the chicken so I could cook it and make this great meal. And so I did. I bought the chicken, and, of course, actually through a third person, but bought the chicken and got somebody to clean it for me and cooked it, and we ate it. And a couple of days later, there's a chicken on the roof, and it turned out we'd eaten the wrong chicken.
Oh, wah, 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 wah. I bet you Peace Corps people just are full of stories. You live in these towns. But that's an interesting example of adapting as a gringo in this case, or trying to adapt to a different culture and do things the right way. And you picked the wrong chicken. Did you think it was the right? I mean, you were like.
Yeah, we taught it a lesson.
It'll never do that again, you thought. But boy, were you wrong. Well, one of the things that I was thinking about when we were going to do the show was remembering back to the ads on TV they used to have about the Peace Corps, which used to say, as you know, I'm sure well, it's the toughest job you'll ever love.
Right.
And I was thinking, we don't really see those ads anymore, although we still see ads for the armed services, where, you can see a Marine, fighting a dragon, or somebody in the Army helping to land a team of helicopters, which is real applicable to, I'm sure, everybody's real life experience in the armed forces, right? But they don't tend to depict the cleaning the latrines with toothbrushes so much. But I wondered, is that something you come back from your experience there and you say, yeah, it's pretty accurate, the toughest job you'll ever love, and why don't we see the ads anymore? That's what I want to know, first of all.
You'd have to call Peace Corps Washington for that, but it's tough in a way that I think jobs generally aren't. That is, the adjustment, the being on your own, for the most part. There's some lonely times, times when you don't know what you're going to do next, and you're sort of struggling, especially first, and so it's tough, but it's also your life. I mean, the separation between work and not work is definitely very blurred. I don't think there is really any distinction. I'm currently filling out forms that say, how many hours a week do you work? In the Peace Corps, I don't know, 40, 80,
90,
24 hours a day. I mean, it's all part of it, building the relationships.
So basically, if you're saying 24 hours a day, sleeping counts as work. See, now, I tried
Certainly
that with the IRS. I tried to deduct my bed.
Certainly in the hammock, I think it should count. That's adjusting to the cultural norm of
right.
Panama.
That's true.
Yeah. But yeah, we both had a great time and certainly loved it. I would say that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, my sense is that when you come back, like, you've had to deal with so much potential adversity and no one to turn to but yourself, really. I'm sure there are a lot of Peace Corps people, or people who go through the rigmarole of training and everything, and whatever they do to weed out the
losers,
the individuals who would not be as appropriate for the Peace Corps. And still, there are some who can't hack it and go back. And after that, when you come back, well, okay, I'm generalizing, but you come back after an experience like that, 2 years, and do you get the sense like there's nothing you can't handle now that you've done that? I mean, you go into a subway and you don't know the way, and it's like, well, I dealt with living in the rural Panama for 2 years on my own, and I think I can figure out which one is the D train.
Right. Well, you hope that's true. I don't know if it really is.
Sometimes lately it's been, since we've gotten back, it's felt more like I'd rather be in rural Panama than we go back.
Well, that brings up another point that you mentioned before the show, or when we were discussing it earlier, about that sometimes it's more difficult to get acclimated back to American, quote-unquote, culture. The malls and the consumerism and such, or whatever it is, than it was to just go originally yourself to this third world country. And what does the Peace Corps do for you to get you back, make a seamless transition into...
Well, 3 months before we finished, we had what's called a close of service conference.
Yeah.
And they talk about, that was actually when they told us that, believe it or not, the hardest part of Peace Corps is what's up ahead, not what just happened. And that readjustment can be really difficult and take months and months. And I think, and they provide some help, resume writing and things like that, although with the round of budget nightmares last year, I think most of those programs have unfortunately been cut. And
call your congressperson.
Call your congressperson, because it is really important. It's just, kind of, otherwise we just come back and that's it. And it does feel strange here, actually. I was saying to John today that in Panama and traveling in South America, most of the time you feel weird and different than everyone else. I mean, they think you're weird. You just stick out like a sore thumb. You do weird things, yeah. Yeah, and now we're back.
John, you had a cat, and you actually fed it cat food, right?
Right.
And the
weird.
people were just like...
Yeah, but here, because of our experience and the, our perspective has changed, it's true, you do come back feeling like a different person in some respects. I feel weird and different here compared to everyone else, but I know I'm not supposed to, and I know that at least, I look like most other people here, and it's a little unsettling to be weird and different here, too.
There was somebody you mentioned who had come back from India, I think? Was that the story, or somewhere that had difficulty and was shocked whenever anybody handed him anything?
Oh, that was with the hand thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the Arabic country volunteers,
Arabic country.
you know, they're not supposed to use their left hand to do anything overseas. Well, I don't want to be gross, but you know what they use their left hand for.
my audience demands it. They want some bathroom humor.
Well, let's just say that paper products are limited over there.
So
From
they use
my
the left
understanding,
hand
the left hand.
for
So
everything that we perhaps might use paper products, writing notes, blowing their nose, blowing
Along
other parts
that
of their body.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you don't touch money or food with it. And
Ever.
So
if a
everything you
volunteer
do with your
coming
right
back-
hand in Arabic countries
Apparently,
generally. And so he came back to the United States, and people were like, can I taste your soup? You know, that's good. He's like, ah.
Well, here I think we're still fighting the urge to throw toilet paper in the garbage can rather than in the commode, as it were, because that's what you do. And well, with the outhouse, it's a little different, but
Yeah.
that's what we got used to in South America.
Yeah, and this wouldn't be a problem really, except for the fact that you're staying with me, and my house is starting to reek. So if you could pretty much figure that one out sooner rather than later, it would be
All right, guys,
greatly
enough of the
appreciated.
toilet
All right, we'll
humor.
get on with it. So what about this question now? This is something that I think a lot of people are concerned about, or not concerned, but have an understanding about the Peace Corps, that it's not really so much an organization dedicated to service and helping other third world countries in their development or whatever, but really it's more like a government-run dating service. And that it's like a requirement that you're not allowed to come back unless you've paired off. Is that, I mean, what is the percentages? Do they have any figures on this? Did you bring any
I'm
stats?
sure there's figures. Well, we can tell you about Peace Corps Panama. We have about 60 volunteers at any one time. In the last year, about 8 of them got married.
And to each other?
To Panamanians.
Oh, to Panamanians?
Actually,
Yeah.
yeah.
They were struck with Panamania. but not to,
And-
so I was thinking it was sort of intermarriage.
Well, I mean, before we left, just talking to people, you know, we're going into Peace Corps.
Oh,
well,
I met
not
my
at that point. It
husband in
wasn't.
Peace Corps,
Yeah,
you know.
to hear about people that met or that came back to the United States.
And discovered the only people they could relate to were Peace Corps volunteers.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
ended
I
up married
believe
a
it.
volunteer that, you know, served in a completely different country. That certainly happens. But in Panama, for whatever reason, both male volunteers marrying female Panamanians and the other, vice versa. It wasn't just limited. All the Panamanians I talked to thought that gringas, female volunteers, couldn't marry Panamanians because they never saw it. They expected male volunteers to, you know, look for their bride to be in Panama. That was natural.
Yeah.
But the other way
They would ask
around
me all
was
the time. So
surprising to
it's
them.
true that your government won't let you marry a Panamanian, for example, you know, or whatever. And I mean, I was always trying to encourage that.
Right, so
incorrect
you were like,
belief. As
yeah,
a matter of fact,
throw me in
it is
prison.
in the Constitution.
Death penalty.
No, I think it's just because the U.S. military has had such a huge presence in Panama ever since its inception. You know, then they've been marrying Panamanian women, the military guys, all along.
Yeah.
So, I mean, most.
And
it seems-
is it like an officer and gentleman type of thing where many Panamanian women aspire to marry?
Mhm.
Yeah, certainly
Definitely.
hear about that, and especially in the Canal Zone area, obviously, where there's a military presence to this day.
Well, I've prepared to see how well you really have gotten to understand your home country for the past 2 years. I've prepared a little quiz. There's only 3 questions, but I think it will be pretty accurate. And you can chime in whichever one you want. The first question, you know, this is not, it's, the first 2 questions are together, you're working together.
Okay.
The first question is, who is currently the head of the Panamanian government?
Would that be the president?
That would be Ernesto Perez Valladares,
Otherwise known as El Toro.
and our personal friend.
Oh, really? I'm sorry, I have,
Oh, we should have brought that picture.
I have Manuel Noriega, but
Where's the judge?
this show is being,
Same political party, it's okay.
well, this show is being sponsored by the 1985 edition of the World Book Encyclopedia, and that's available at any local yard sale. Okay, second question. What is Panama's #1 export? That's a toughie, yeah. What could it be?
Legal or illegal?
Let's just have an answer.
I think
Buzzard.
shrimp. Shrimp or bananas?
I'm sorry, those are both incorrect. The correct answer is hats. Panama hats. I didn't do a whole lot of research. Okay, this one's serious.
Well, are
I
you going
want-
to clear that up, or
All
are
right,
you going to leave it to us?
I haven't the slightest idea. Hats, that's what I have hats.
No, but
No, those are from Ecuador.
yeah, the
Panama
truth
hats are made
is
in Ecuador.
the
Sorry.
the hat that is popularly known as Panama are made in Ecuador.
Well, this show is more about style than substance.
Well,
so,
continue, please.
I mean, we got Rook Perry. All right, final question. This was whoever can think of one first. Name another sovereign nation with the same number of A's in the nation's name as Panama. Do 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 do.
Azerbaijan.
That
good
is
one.
correct. We also would have accepted Tanzania, Kazakhstan, Albania, Canada, Paraguay, or this is the surprise.
Canada, isn't that a state?
The United States of America has 3 A's in it as well. All right, so so now that you're back, you're going to be looking for jobs, I assume, right?
Right.
I mean, you got to get out of my house eventually. And what type of work do you anticipate that you can do now that, I mean, after the experience of, I assume the Peace Corps is a lot like going to liberal arts college. It does you no good whatsoever in preparing you for any actual work.
Well, if I wanted to stay in environmental education, I don't think it would be that hard to find a job. Certainly for a season, you know, a lot of camps or courses go for the summer, spring and summer.
And we can do it in Spanish.
Yeah, bilingual. I'm sort of looking to get back to what I was doing before the Peace Corps and something in wildlife biology, hopefully with some field stuff. And so Peace Corps was a great experience, but perhaps not completely relevant to what I'm going to continue to do. Although there'll certainly be skills and the language hopefully will come in use.
And you didn't know that when you went in?
No.
It's kind of a big gamble.
What about you, Kirsten? What would you hope to do? Use this as your your jumping off point to leapfrog into stellar success as what?
Actually, I'd like to keep doing the same kind of thing I was doing in Peace Corps. Not the environmental education per se, but working with communities to help them manage their natural resources.
What I would like is, John, you were talking about that
Agroforestry?
Yeah, that where they the ecotourism, right? I haven't cut my grass in the backyard for about 8 months, and I think we might be able to organize some sort of ecotourism there. So anyway, if out there in our tremendous, wide-reaching, ubiquitous viewing audience, anybody who's got a job that might, the two people who are
Please, we're desperate.
really very applicable skills and bilingual.
Have great chicken stories.
Yeah, tremendous stories. But we're almost out of time. First of all, like all of my guests, you two receive bumper stickers. Practice random acts bumper stickers, which I may have already given to you, but if not, you get more. Get those? We all right on those? Okay, we're good on those. And
Thank you.
I should mention that I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. You guys were informative and entertaining, and you did a great job. And thanks to the crew and John Begany, his first time directing the show. I'm sure he did excellent. And if he didn't, well, it'll be his last time. And last thing, contact the DC Peace Corps Volunteer Center or Peace Corps Center if you want to give.
There's some 1-800 number.
Give
We're
them a
not going
job.
to flash it at the screen.
And otherwise, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Merry Kwanzaa, and we'll see you in the new year. Thanks for tuning into Idle Exchange, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.